Greetings, Wanderer. You've stepped into the Candlelit library, where I keep watch over shelves of forgotten pages and half-remembered whispers. I read to you by the glow of a single candle, its flame steady against the dark, so that the quietest fears may be heard without hurry. Settle into the hush, let the door close behind you, and keep your mind open to what the shadowed corners might recall. If the tale lingers after the wick is spent, you'll know you listened well. Now, draw nearer to the light, and we shall begin. Have you ever felt a sound before you heard it? An almost physical pressure like the hush that gathers in a theatre a breath before the orchestra begins. I felt it the first night I arrived at Hollowcliff Bell Tower. A silence so dense it made the blood in my ears pulse louder than any heartbeat. Yet threaded through that silence was something else, something I could not name, as though the air itself was straining to remember a note long forgotten. I had come on a modest grant to catalogue the tower's rusted machinery for the Historical Acoustics Society. Decades ago, its bronze bells tolled the hours for 3 neighbouring villages, until a landslip cut the road and emptied the valley. The locals spoke of family trees severed overnight, homes peeled open like fruit by the shifting earth. In time, the villages withered, but the tower remained, a narrow spine of black stone lodged in the cliffs. When the society requested a quieter, natured caretaker with archival skills, I volunteered, telling myself the loneliness would feel like rest. The bell tower stood 3 stories tall, each floor a hollow drum of chill stone. Dust lay on everything in a fine grey bloom, yet no spider dared claim the place, as if vibration, not cobweb, ruled these rafters. My quarters were in the keeper's cottage 100 paces downslope. 2 rooms, a hearth that breathed reluctantly, and windows looking straight into the fog that endlessly poured the cliff face. At night, the sea's distant hush mingled with the wind in the gorse, conjuring a lullaby built of sighs. The first week passed in an amiable routine. By day I sketched the bells, their mouths furred with verdigris, their clappers frozen mid-arc like tongues stilled mid-sentence. By evening, I transcribed the tower's brittle maintenance logs, noting each entry's peculiar silence. No record of damage, no reason ever given for why the bells were simply left. I drank weak tea that tasted faintly of iron and listened to the hearth crack until sleep took me. It was on the 8th night that I woke to a vibration so delicate it seemed inside my bones. The cottage was dark, embers glowed like watchful eyes. I sat up, waiting for thunder or quarry blasts, any earthly cause. Instead, a single low resonance passed through the air, softer than a cough, yet unmistakably the timbre of a bronze bell. By the time I reached the window, the sound had thinned into nothing, but the fog outside glimmered with little ripples, as though shaken by an unseen ripple of sound. I told myself wind in the chimney can mimic anything if the mind is suggestible enough, and I have always been suggestible. Still, I carried a lantern and walked to the tower, boots scuffing gravel that gleamed like damp ash. Inside, everything lay exactly as it had at dusk, ropes slack, gears dormant, bells mute. Yet the hush felt bruised, as if some great mass had just departed and the air was still creaking back into shape. Over the following days, the phenomenon repeated, never louder than a lullaby hummed in the next room, never at the same hour. Sometimes I felt it more than heard it, a compression in the lungs, the ghost of a frequency brushing the skin. I grew accustomed to pausing mid-sentence, waiting for the tremor to pass, then resuming my catalogue notes as though nothing unusual had intruded. The strangeness nested inside routine like a sleeper under blankets. It was the tower's logbook that eventually turned the key on my skepticism. One entry, dated precisely 50 years before my arrival, read, "Third night of murmuring. Bells remain still, yet Elise hears them in her sleep. Townsfolk complain of headaches shaped like notes they cannot sing." A fortnight later, ropes removed, bells chained, still the valley rings. The final entry was only a single line. "They are remembering us too loudly." I closed the book with a hush so reverent it felt like prayer. That night I dreamed of vast bronze mouths opening under the sea, exhaling vowels too old for language, syllables the planet had carried since magma first cooled to skin. Weeks slid by in a velvet monotony. My waking hours grew narrower, my sleep dense and dream-studded. Some mornings I found salt crusts on my pillow, as if I had wept brine. Other mornings, words lingered in my throat, fragments of the valley's lost names: Greystone, Willowmarsh, Beld's Beer. I had never read these in any ledger, yet I knew them the way one knows the scent of their childhood attic, intimately, involuntarily. One dusk, while noting hairline fractures in the second largest bell, a thought landed in my mind with the weight of a plummet. What if bells do not merely ring but remember? The bronze, alloyed from the valley's own ore, had drunk every storm, every laughter, every funeral dirge rising from below. When the landslip erased the villages, perhaps the bells had been left alone with too many memories, and like any solitary mind, they began to speak them aloud. The idea was unscientific, but it fit the hush that wrapped the tower, a hush not of vacancy, but of strenuous listening. I tried experiments. At midnight I whispered into the bell's cold lips, my history, my shames, secrets I had never shared, the taste of pennies on my tongue when anxiety surged. Then I waited, breathing the bell's metallic exhalation. Nothing answered, but later, while half asleep near the dying hearth, I heard my own confessions reverberate faintly from the fog outside, as though the air were chewing over my words, deciding what flavor they were. The valley's paths grew more uncertain. Some evenings a footbridge appeared where the creek had been nothing but stones. Other times the path I'd walked 100 times dead-ended in nettles I did not recognize. I might have blamed the mist, yet the alterations felt intentional, like stagehands moving scenery while I looked away. I sensed the landscape arranging itself into the memory the bells preferred. In late autumn the weather turned brittle. Frost webbed the windows, each pane etched with patterns resembling topographical lines, 3 ghost villages traced in ice. I studied them as I sipped tea, certain that if I found the right intersection of frost roads, I would glimpse a warm window on the other side, a child's face perhaps, flickering, waiting for the hour to strike. On the night of the first snowfall, the ringing finally bloomed into undeniable sound. I was transcribing by lamplight when the air thickened, the way a throat thickens before tears. A resonant toll blossomed overhead, solemn, sonorous, impossibly whole. The cottage shook, dust rose from beams like grain thrown to birds. Yet amid the grandeur, I felt no urge to flee. The note was not a warning but an invitation, a single perfect syllable of welcome. I walked out coatless, snow swirling in loose skeins around the lantern's dim halo. The tower doors were already ajar, as though the stone itself had nudged them open. Inside, the bells quivered without moving, their metal skins rippling like tarnished water. Light, too, seemed to resonate, my lantern flame elongated, fluttering in sympathy. Then I saw them, faint figures shaped by dust and vibration alone, assembled on the tower's upper galleries. Men and women in work clothes that shimmered like mica, children perched on the railing with solemn curiosity. No eyes, no mouths, just outlines sustained by sound. With each toll, their edges sharpened. They regarded me politely, a gathering awaiting the speaker who had yet to arrive. I understood, with a clarity that felt borrowed, that they were not ghosts of the villagers but memories the bells had cultivated. Remembrances grown so saturated they had acquired posture. The ringing slowed, not dying but turning inward, like a breath held. The figures inclined their heads toward me. In that hush, I heard more than silence. I heard expectation. Somehow, my presence had agitated the tower's archive of sound, stirred it into near flesh, and now it sought completion. I climbed the stairs. Each step hummed, tuned to a separate note on a hidden scale. The air shivered against my skin, mapping my pulse. When I reached the carillon deck, the largest bell loomed overhead, its mouth black as a starless well. Frost glittered along its rim, spelling nothing I could read. Yet I felt the intent. Speak, and we will keep it. I thought of the lives below the cliff, their laughter and grief compacted into awe, smelted into message. I thought of how lonely a valley can become when no one is left to notice its echoes, and I thought finally of my own small life, footnotes in academic journals, Apartments that never felt like rooms but borrowed vestibules. If the bells wished to remember, let them. I placed my palm on the cold bronze. The surface was vibrating so subtly that the chill felt alive. I closed my eyes and whispered the only thing that felt honest. Remember me gently. A hush settled velvet thick. The figures dissolved like breath on glass. The bells calmed, not into silence but into a purr so low it merged with my bloodstream. I descended, lantern dimming, snow still falling but muffled now, flakes drifting as if underwater. Since that night, the valley keeps different hours. Dawn comes late, as though the sun waits for an unseen baton. I continue my cataloguing, but the work feels ceremonial, a scribe etching vowels already preserved in bronze. Sometimes, while half asleep, I taste metal on my tongue, and know the bells are telling one another stories in which I appear as a minor character, winding a lantern through snow. I do not fear becoming memory. Memory here is spacious, sonorous, carried on waves of air that cradle as much as they unsettle. And when the ringing swells, soft, enveloping, I lie back, let the sound braid through my thoughts, and listen, 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 until even listening becomes a form of rest.